Hello and welcome everyone. I'm here with the one and only Martha Clarke. Martha has helped me to pick the right places for me to live abroad. And so we're going to do this interview and this conversation with Martha to learn about astrocartography, how it works, what it is, why she does it, and how it can help you pick the right place to determine if you need to move. So Martha, first off, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you
So
for
great to
having
be
me,
with you.
Michael. It's lovely to reconnect with you. It's been a while.
I know, yeah,
Um,
it's been a while.
yeah. The whole world is relocating, it feels like.
It does, yes,
Has that
exactly.
been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I know people are relocating right now. I'm traveling around the USA myself. I'm going to Portugal in September. I just got back from Colombia in March. And then here we are in August, and everybody's still asking the question, should I move? Is it time to move? Where should I move to? How do I do it? And that's why we got this course, and that's why we got this interview with you. So let's get to it. So um, if you don't mind, tell us what astrocartography is, please.
Yeah. Basically, we start with your natal birth chart. So your natal birth chart is like your spiritual CV. It's the lessons that your soul came into this lifetime to learn and experience. And a lot of people now want to jump straight to astrocartography without realizing how important it is to understand your natal birth chart. Because before we go to astrocartography, the next chart that's really important is your transit chart. And that's where the planets are at the moment and what lessons are being triggered in your natal birth chart for you to look at. Because very often when somebody gets the urge to relocate, it's actually triggered by a transit. And unfortunately, there's an
Oh,
awful lot more free stuff on the internet now saying, if you move to your Venus line, you'll find love. If you move to your Mars line, you'll find action. It's not so much that it's more complex than that. But for example, if you have, Pluto aspecting Venus by transit, Pluto is deep, intense life and death type of transformation. Venus isn't just love and seduction. Venus is beauty, truth, justice, our value system and our finances. So if you have Pluto transiting Venus, that in essence is, for example, a complete transformation of your value system. So if you're living in New York and you move to Colombia, that transit will still play out, but it will play out in different parts of your chart. And what a lot of people also skip is a relocated chart, which is regenerating your natal birth chart as if you've been born in the new location. So therefore, Pluto transiting Venus in Dublin will play out differently than Pluto transiting Venus in New York. And transits, between the personal planets are over in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Transits between the outer and the social planets can last up to 2.5 years. So, like astrocartography is almost like the last step. Astrocartography is, okay, I'm drawn to these places in the world. Why am I drawn to them? And then if people, because basically
that's
very
key.
often people will come to seek to relocate because there's a transit going on. They suddenly feel the urge to be more creative, or they feel the urge to have a more spiritual life, or they feel the urge to be more part of a community. And that's why they relocate. People think they're relocating for a bigger job or for more money. It's always spiritual reason or a creative reason. And that's something I've learned during COVID and since COVID. That may not have been the case when me first connected, but that's been my own experience of clients the last 2 to 3 years. They're seeking a
Hmm.
more spiritual life, or they want to go off grid, or they really want to paint, or they want to write a book, or they want to feel connected to the community, or they want to put down roots for the next couple of years. So astrocartography is kind of like the fine-tuning part of the natal, the transit, the relocated, and then the astrocartography. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm going to translate some of that because people who are watching this are at all different parts of their journey where some of them are
Yeah.
familiar with astrology or familiar with astrocartography, and then there's people that are not familiar with any of it.
Yeah.
So astrology is the movement of planets stars, celestial bodies, and how it affects us here on Earth, right?
Absolutely,
That's astrology.
absolutely. It's like
Okay.
where the planets were in the sky the moment you came into this Earth. You know, your
Right. Okay.
astrological chart is generated the moment you take your first breath.
Woo. And that's why you get as specific as, so you need details when you talk to someone such as date of birth, but place of birth, time of birth,
Yeah.
and things like that. Because, and then what you do is you map out with the planets and you show them, here's where
Mhm.
things were when you were born. This was there. That planet was in that area, and that planet was in that area. And this means that. And then you do like, so the places you're looking at or you're thinking of being called to, Japan, China, Australia, Brazil, and then you map out like, okay, well, if you go there, that's what that means, and that's what that means, and that's what you'll
Yeah.
find, and then
Yeah.
that's what will be in that area, and that planet governing love or passion or beauty or money or action will be in that area, right?
Yeah. I mean, astrocartography is essentially about angularity, the ascendant, the descendant, the midheaven, and the IC. They're kind of four key points in your chart. The ascendant is like, you know, how you're seen in the world. The descendant, which is across from the ascendant, then is kind of like your shadow self that you project onto others, which is why, you know, we attract partners or friends that, you know, might trigger us because they're maybe symbolizing parts of ourselves that we haven't yet owned. And then the midheaven is like the highest point in your chart, which is, you know, the legacy you want to leave to the world. Then down the other end of that, we have the IC, which is home and roots and family of origin. So when we're looking at astrocartography, Michael, we're basically looking at what planets form angular lines to those four axes of the birth chart. It actually is as simple as that. It's very complex, but also beautifully simple at the same time.
Like true beauty, it is
Yeah,
complex but simple and beautiful at the same time. So I
yeah.
want to say that, you know, I want to say a couple things about astrology. When I was young, I doubted astrology. Like many people, you know, you got these signs and it says you're this and you're that and you're compatible with this and that person. It's kind of whatever, right? When I really started to tune into astrology and pay attention to it myself was when I heard this famous quote directly from J.P. Morgan. I'm pretty sure it was J.P. Morgan, where he said, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires use astrology. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a direct quote. And you know, he's an ultra wealthy, savvy businessman whose, you know, name still lives on today. Now he's got a banking empire, family empire, all these things, right? So that really tuned me on and perked me up to like, oh, that's something to pay attention to. And then when I started studying, you know, the world and how things work, I noticed like there's a reason why Black Friday falls on a certain day, and there's a reason why Thanksgiving falls on a certain day, and there's a reason why July 4th falls on a certain day, and these holidays and these other days and holy days and all these other things when you start to break down the language. So I will personally say that astrology is nothing to, poo-poo at. It's nothing to just kind of ignore. It's really something to pay attention to. And
Mhm.
I hired you when I was thinking about moving. So when I was in my process and my journey to do my move in COVID to Mexico, I reached out to you, found you, a couple other people. You were the best, most responsive, you know, most clear
Wow.
person,
Thank you.
and I happily bought some sessions with you. And I remember I was looking at Japan, Thailand, and I think Mexico, or maybe Brazil, and you had me narrow it down, and even Portugal, because those were kind of expat spots.
Yeah.
And then you had me narrow it down to three. You did a great job over 2 sessions, breaking it down and telling me what I might find, what I might encounter, what energies would be heightened if
Yeah.
I went here, here, and here.
And what
Right?
was your experience of Mexico? Because you were there for quite a while, weren't you?
Phenomenal. My experience in Mexico was phenomenal, and I
I
and,
think
and
I
it
seem
was
to remember
just.
getting an email along the lines of I probably never leave here.
And I probably wouldn't have, but then I was in Mexico for 2 years. Then I went to Colombia for like 9 months, and I went back and forth on and off visiting family and friends in Mexico. I bought 2 pieces of land in Mexico, many
Wow.
friends, many great relationships. You know, it was the healing that I needed from the divorce I was going through. Went
Right.
through a divorce and separation, and it was the perfect place to heal and recover and replenish and reground and rebalance and restart myself in Mexico. And I had a lot of abundant, amazing opportunities and a lot of business like successes and like just so many things really beautifully lined up for me in Mexico. So I think your work absolutely helped me make that decision 100%.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that because very often I don't get feedback. If I reach out to a client, that they'll tell me how things are. But like what I have noticed in the last year, because before we came on live here, we were talking about like how titanic the energies are this year. Um, that what I have found this year, people are relocating in stages. They're not doing the whole giving up the job, selling the apartment and going off somewhere for the next 3 to 5 years. They're doing maybe one place for 6 weeks or 3 months. Then they're trying another place for 3 months. Then they're trying somewhere else for 6 weeks. And part of that, I suppose, has been driven by the global economy. You have to allow for that. But, I still stand by what I say in terms of like, if you're living in the right place, doesn't matter what the economy is like there, doesn't matter how expensive the accommodation is, doesn't matter how difficult it is to rent somewhere, it will all fall in place. But very often what's driving the desire to move is our soul is seeking something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense for me too. I actually I had the intuition and the premonition to leave Canada and go abroad and travel pre-COVID. So I remember getting distinct messages and feelings. Like I said to my then wife at the time, I said, I think, I don't know why, but I feel like we need to move. I feel like something's going to happen. Something big is going to happen. And we should not be here. We should move.
I remember you
And
saying that, yeah.
right. And then it happened and we were stuck and then we stayed and then 9 months and whatever. And she apologized to me. She's like, you were right. And she's like, we should have left then. And she was never ready to leave in the first
I
place. Like
remember
I
that,
went
yeah.
and she stayed. I was just going to go for 3 weeks. And then 3 weeks turned into 3 months. Right. And then I was like, why leave all these shutdowns and lockdowns and everything? And yeah,
Portugal is
so
full of people, especially the Algarve, where I spend a lot of time now, as you probably know. It's every person you meet has I came here before, during, or after hours as a result of COVID. Every
yeah,
single person you meet, because
yeah,
obviously you would know a lot of people in the holistic industry. And what's been really interesting about Portugal, because you said you're going there in September, it's like it was one of the top countries for Americans to move to. And then you see, because what Portugal did during COVID, and I didn't quite realize it until about 9 months ago, like they were the first country in Europe to open up. So loads of people, like thousands of people, got on planes and said, we're going anywhere, like we'll just go to Portugal. And then Portugal shut down again, so they had to stay. Like there's like thousands of people that kind of, my marketing assistant, that's what happened to her. She tells the story all the time. She was about to get permanent residency in Australia. She had to leave because of COVID. They couldn't process it. She went back to the UK to stay with her dad. And then the minute Portugal opened up, she got on a flight. Portugal closed down. She got stuck there. She stayed. She now has her own business there. It was all kind of very serendipitous. So, because we have gone through, so I think this year also, Michael, has been very much a year where people are only really starting to process what we've all gone through since 2020. 2022 and 2023 were still very much years of catching up with people you hadn't seen for 2 years. We thought that was all done and
right.
dusted in 2022. 2023 was still like that. Then obviously, in Europe, we have the war in Ukraine as well and the war in the Middle East,
Yeah,
which hugely shifted the landscape. But it's literally this year that people are saying, oh my God, I didn't quite realize how rough the last couple of years were. And like, I
yeah,
still haven't come to terms with the fact that there's no going back to how things were, which is why I did
yeah,
want to talk about Pluto going back into Capricorn on the 1st of September, because it's quite relevant to the whole world is relocating now, because Pluto is in Aquarius now, which is why we're seeing all this like uprising against like the patriarchy and old systems and old way of doing things. But Pluto goes back into Capricorn on the 1st of September, which is only 2 weeks away, for like one final clear out of everything until the 19th of November, which nicely covers the American elections. And for people relocating, it's like, the analogy I use is, it's like we've built our new structure, we've built our house, we've bought the furniture, but we can't put the key in the door because we discovered there's a whole pile of rubble that we have to clear. So, those 6 weeks, or it's actually 2.5 months, are a time of clear out everything at the, because if you don't do it, Pluto will come along and do it for you. So, you may find that, every single person you meet during that period is saying, I planned on moving, but there's this stuff that I have to do that's stopping me. And then when you do that, that's when you can move.
Wow.
Have you found that among people that you've been talking to?
I find that people are hesitant. Yes, that's why I'm doing this course and creating this work, because people are hesitant and they need a few things. They need some sense of security, some sense that if things are going to be okay, that they can have a plan B and come back if they need to. They got to work things out with their job or with their family or with their kids or with the school or with their money. And so the whole course is all designed to like help people through each of those things so they can feel comfortable and make the decision if it's time to move.
Yeah. Plan B is a good idea. And like up to 9 months ago, I was telling people, don't worry about plan B. I'm not saying that now, because, the reality is, the global economy is contracting. The reality is, wars are getting worse. Anybody going to the UK, God bless them, like the whole passport and border control thing is an absolute nightmare at the moment. And things like that, do play in. But, as against that, there's sites like Selena, I think it's selena.com, which does co-living as well as co-working. We're all familiar with the concept of co-working, but co-living is now huge. So, one of the practical things, as I said, I am saying to people is do it in stages this time.
Right, I see. That makes sense.
2 to 3 weeks, or, ask for unpaid leave. If you don't ask, you don't get. One of my favorite sayings is if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Start by asking for 2 weeks unpaid leave and then wiggle the dates and make sure that it's 3 weeks, or save, bank 2 years worth of holidays, things like that. Those are practical pieces of advice that I'm giving people. But, if your transits are right, and if you're picking the place that you're drawn to, I still do see that it will play out the way it's meant to.
Very cool.
Like you probably never imagined a situation where your ex-wife would be saying, actually, you're right, we should have gone when you said we go. Like if you get the urge to go, that's your answer.
If you get the feeling you need to go, then you need to go.
Yeah, and also I remember, because, a lot of people, have struggled on so many levels during COVID. And I remember, reading a thing, I can't remember who wrote it. You can't heal in the place where you became ill. Like, with you obviously going through a divorce, you've had a lot of loss. So staying in a place where there's been any kind of loss isn't necessarily a good thing. I'm selling my house in West Cork, for example. That wasn't the game plan 3 months ago. So I'm doing my own relocation, but I'm relocating within Ireland and then back to Portugal. So I'm doing a 2-step move. Yeah, my house went sale agreed in 9 days.
I see. Yeah, I remember last week we talked about it. So a couple of things I want to say about what you said is, celestial bodies do have effect. Right? They do affect you. I have a mentor who's a billionaire who says the same thing. Celestial bodies do affect us. And I like that you're talking about honoring your urges and like listening to the impulses and listening to the feelings. One of the things that is clear to me too about celestial bodies having effects on us, for example, plain and simple for any doubters out there, is the moon, right? When the moon is full, there are more murders, rapes, assaults, issues with the police and people and physical activity than at any other time in the month. Also, I think women's menstrual cycles are heavier when it's on a full moon. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Also, the tides, the ocean and the beach and the tides and the water coming in and out is based on the moon. The moon controls the water and the ocean and the beaches and the tides. And farmers have known this for years. Almanacs and ancient histories and ancient civilizations have known this for years. And I think the last thing is if you're having a surgery on a full moon, like classically, consistently throughout history, if you're having a surgery, the doctors say that there will be 30% more blood loss on a surgery on a full moon.
I thought you were going to say to me there's 30% more chance that the doctor would be hungover. Right. Okay.
Maybe in the UK,
I very much believe those statistics. Wow.
Yeah. Like they're well documented. So I think that, this is really something to pay attention to. And if people are thinking of moving, they should get in contact with you. and do a session, do a few sessions, buy a package, and look into it, talk to you, because this will greatly enhance their ability, confidence, and clarity to
Yeah.
decide, is it time to move? And if so, when and where, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm offering bespoke packages, that's on my website since about 2 weeks ago. My calendar is closed for the next couple of weeks just to smooth the sale of the house. But if people want sessions, they can email me and I will open up the calendar. But also I'm doing bespoke packages because like a lot of people, I've kind of modified how I work as well, because sometimes people will come to me and say, oh, I know my natal chart. Can I skip to the astrocartography? And to be honest, it never works when they do that. The
Really?
feedback I always, because you can there's only a certain point to which you can quiz people, because invariably they'll come and it might have been 5 years since they had their chart read, or they've no idea what transits they're going through. Like if you're going through a Neptune transit, for example, your creativity is heightened, but that could also play out that, your body is more sensitive. So therefore you need to extra slow down and extra take care and learn to be patient. The collective transit we're going through at the moment is Mars conjunct Jupiter. That's been like that for about 3 weeks, and we saw that when we had the world outage, because Mars is passion, drive, action, and then Jupiter is expansion and travel. Like nobody could travel for almost 3 days in some parts of the world. So that transit doesn't finish until the end of this week. But what I am saying to people, the biggest thing, because the Pluto going back into Capricorn is what we call a collective transit. So anybody who's planning on moving between now and the 19th of November, just clear up any practical day-to-day stuff that might be slowing you down. Your paperwork, your contracts. For example, I thought, because I do a lot of space clearing and feng shui work, and I thought I'd hardly anything to clear in my house. And I was up at 5:30 this morning clearing things for 4 hours. I had 10 bags to clear, which for somebody who doesn't have much, that was actually quite a lot to clear. And I feel completely different. Or, one of the other things that I'm seeing a lot is that people are being driven down different vocations than they expected. I'm seeing that all the time.
What do you mean by that?
People changing vocations, and that it's happening quite organically.
When you say vocations, you mean like passions or work,
anything,
or
maybe, I thought I was going to develop my Reiki business, but guess what? I'm going to become a writer instead. Or, I was going to stay in that computer company that I don't like very much. I was going to stay for another year and save my money. But you know what? I'm just going to leave. The people,
wow.
Because on the practical level, the other advice I'm giving to people, because social media as well is just, it's impacting our brains far more than we realize. When I was in Portugal, I saw a lot of holistic practitioners, just posting stuff without people's consent. And that to me is just out of integrity. So what we're seeing is people going more and more down that road, and then other people saying, I want no part of it. I will just run my own business in a way that's in alignment with how I want to run it, not with how modern marketing trends are. That's something I'm seeing all over the place, particularly in the last 3 months, which is really interesting. And my top word for the last 3 months has been integrity.
Beautiful.
If you really want to leave the job that you hate, do it with integrity. Don't go to your boss and say, you know what, I've always hated this job. I'm leaving in 2 weeks.
I'm leaving today. Some people quit on the spot.
I've done that in my time. But do it in integrity,
Yeah. Good call. Well said. So where can people get a hold of you? What's the best place to connect with you and talk about sessions and what that sort of
The best place is I blog roughly every 3 weeks, and I usually blog according to what's happening with the collective astrology. To send me an email, info@marthaclarkeastrology.com. As I said, the calendar is closed off until early September, but I will open it up for people behind the scenes if people want to see me before that. And then the website is marthaclarkeastrology.com, and I have pretty much a blog for any question you could ask me about astrocartography, what does a Pluto line mean? What does a Venus line mean? Why are transits important? You might have to troll through a couple of the blogs, but because that was the whole point of doing so much blogging, Michael, to have a blog for pretty much any question anybody could answer, ask me. Why are minor aspects?
Mm-hmm.
And why is understanding your natal chart so important? Because jumping straight to astrocartography, astrocartography is not a quick fix for everything that's wrong in your life.
Course, yeah.
And,
you
and
still
also,
have to do the work.
Also we do so much now around like visualizing and manifesting, but you can visualize your new life in Morocco, but you still have to research the flights and whether you need a visa.
Yeah, and that's what my course will answer.
There. You still need to do the practical stuff around manifesting.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still have to take the decisions, have the conversations with your family, with your boss.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah.
So when are you going to Portugal?
September 12th.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. And how long are you going to be there
for? Just until the 24th, just 2 weeks.
Right. And what part are you going to?
I'm going to Lisbon. Always wanted to go. Finally going to go. Really excited to test those cupcakes, those pastel-nadas that the nuns made.
They're to die for. Yeah.
The recipe is like 400 years old or something like that, right? I always wanted to do that. And then a friend of mine invited me to Albania to give a talk to her group, to her audience.
Oh, wow.
To do a talk on some things, yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be fun. Never been to Albania either.
I hear it's fabulous, yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Swell. Okay, so it's Martha Clarke, astrology.com.
Yeah. Martha with
and
H, Clarke with an E.
Martha with an H and Clarke with an E. And I'll put the links as well. And then they can email you directly, info@marthaclarkeastrology.com.
Yeah.
And your website has tons of blogs and awesome content and places to connect that way. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. By the way, also, we're in Mercury retrograde right now, you said, right? And your camera is a little like fuzzy, but it wasn't like that, just like in the beginning of the call, in the conversation. And it just kind of went, and I'm like, what the heck happened?
It's Mercury retrograde.
Things happen, yeah. Celestial bodies have effect on us, on technology, the Earth, on different cities.
Yeah. Another astrologer said to me, a couple of years ago, the planets know where they're going. We just have to walk along with them. Like us humans think we know where we're going and what we're doing. And, half the time we don't really, but the planets do guide us. And, because the astrology I practice is a combination of fate and free will. The planets were where they were when you were born. But free will means you can change your life direction through relocating and through understanding your transits. Like, sometimes even relocating 20 miles down the road for like 3 days can just give you, if you really want to move to another country, but you can't afford to, or your kids are too young, sometimes even going 20 or 30 miles down the road for 3 days gives you huge perspective, because then you can look back on your life and you can do maybe small things on a daily basis, or particularly if somebody wants to have a more creative life, they can join an online writing group, for example.
Clear. Powerful. Really glad we did this conversation.
Thank you so much.
So glad we did this. Yeah. Great to see you again. Thanks for all the great work you do. MarthaClarkeastrology.com.